Good afternoon. Russian missiles have struck the Ukrainian capital, Kyiv, just hours after President Zelensky warned that the war was entering a difficult phase, and as the G7 group of world leaders gathered in Germany. A 9-story residential building in one district was damaged during the strike. One person was killed and 5 injured, including a 7-year-old girl. Our correspondent Nick Beek sent this report from the scene.
Once again, Ukraine's capital is under attack. This video claiming to show the horizon this lunchtime as more Russian rockets strike. And once again, civilians are in the firing line. A residential block in the centre of Kyiv ripped apart and smouldering. Inside, rescuers reach a young girl pinned down by debris. They manage to bring her to safety and then take her to hospital. Moments later, a Ukrainian official appears outside, brandishing a Russian passport, saying that one woman still trapped is from Moscow. Among those arriving at the site, Kyiv's former boxing champion mayor, who makes clear this is the latest of hundreds of missiles Russia has fired at his city.
At 6:30, Kyiv have rockets attack. I want to remind more than 300 buildings in our hometown was destroyed, 220 apartments building.
Whether or not this was the intended target, it's shattered the relative calm that had returned to the capital Kyiv in recent weeks. It feels like this is Vladimir Putin sending his own message at a time when those G7 leaders are meeting. These flats are near to an ammunition factory, which could have been the intended target. But the head of National Police says they're now collecting evidence which could prove this attack was a war crime. There have been more explosions here in the past few hours. The fierce fighting in the east of Ukraine is far away, but Russia has renewed its effort to strike at the heart of the capital. Nick Beek, BBC News, Kyiv.
As we said, those attacks took place as the leaders of the G7 countries gathered in Germany for their summit. Speaking there, Boris Johnson admitted there are anxieties amongst some nations over how to end the war amid the energy and cost of living crises. From Bavaria, our diplomatic correspondent James Landau reports.
They're leaders of some of the world's richest nations facing some of the world's biggest problems. Above all, Russia's war in Ukraine. In recent weeks, there have been some different ideas around this table, but here at this luxury hotel in Bavaria, they're hoping to put on a show of unity. Boris Johnson, on the latest stage of a week-long foreign tour that's keeping him away from political troubles at home, admitted there was anxiety within the West over the war, but he insisted the G7 remained united.
But in order to protect that unity, in order to make it work, you've got to have really honest discussions about the implications of what's going on, the pressures that individual friends and partners are feeling and populations are feeling, whether it's on the costs of their energy or food or whatever. This is a reunion of a year.
Some leaders want to keep talking to Russia. Others ask if it might not be better to end the war soon to help ease the global economic shock. But that's not the view from here, at least from this man.
We have to stay together, because Putin has been counting on from the beginning. And somehow NATO would, and the G7 would splinter, but we haven't, and we're not going to.
But Russia's president is raising the stakes. This is a Russian short-range missile delivery system. And Mr. Putin is promising to give it to his ally in Belarus in coming months. A system, he made a point of saying, which can carry both conventional and nuclear weapons. Some world leaders outside the G7 club are also here, but they want to talk about the rising costs of energy and food, made worse in part by the war. So at this summit, the G7 wants to send out 2 signals to the world. One, that it remains united and resolved on Ukraine, but also that it remains ready to tackle the global economic crisis. Their aim to show that democratic summits and scenic locations can help solve the world's problems. James Landau, BBC News at the G7.
Live now to our political editor, Chris Mason, who is there as well. And the Prime Minister has not only got Ukraine to worry about, but also big pressures on him back home as well.
Yeah, that's right, Victoria, and he's out of the country for more than a week. First it was the Commonwealth Summit in Kigali in Rwanda, then here in Germany with the G7, then on to the military alliance NATO's gathering in Madrid in a couple of days. You know what's striking here for Mr Johnson and the other leaders is the fundamental truth, and the fundamental truth is one where democratic leaders do feel pressure back home. They have to bend and flex their outlook depending on what their electorates or their political parties are saying to them. We're clearly seeing that with Boris Johnson, the questions that are chasing him around the planet this week. We're seeing it too in the subtle differences between the countries gathered here. There's a frustration from the British government that they feel that Germany, and in particular France, are wobbling a little bit about the long-term support needed to help Ukraine, that we're beyond the emergency phase. Now it's the long-term slog of continual support, given the pressures at home that leaders face around, for instance, the cost of living, as of course does Boris Johnson with his electorate back in the UK. The aim in the next couple of days is one of something of a gear change on sanctions, cranking up sanctions against Russia, and then a game changer, as it's described, on military support for Ukraine. But to get that will require patience and plenty of persuasion, and of course it comes at a cost.
Thank you, Chris. Officials in South Africa believe at least 20 people have died at a nightclub in the southern city of East London. It's understood the victims were aged between 18 and 20 and were celebrating after finishing their school exams. Health authorities said autopsies are being carried out as the cause of the deaths is currently not known. Prince Charles accepted a suitcase containing €1 million in cash from a former Qatari Prime Minister. The Sunday Times says this was one of 3 cash donations from Sheikh Hamad bin Jassim, totalling €3 million. Clarence House said donations from the Sheikh were passed immediately to one of the Prince's charities, and all the correct processes were followed. There's no suggestion the payments were illegal. Finally, Sir Paul McCartney wowed audiences last night at Glastonbury and beyond with his performance on the Pyramid stage, where he was joined by Dave Grohl of the Foo Fighters and Bruce Springsteen. Colin Patterson was there.
36 songs, 21 of them by the Beatles. At the age of 80, Paul McCartney drew the Pyramid stage's biggest crowd since Dolly Parton.
From the west coast of America,
The first guest star of the evening,
Dave Grohl,
was a big surprise.
How could I dance with another?
This is a big moment because it's the first time that Dave Grohl has appeared on stage since the death of his drummer, Taylor Hawkins.
There were fireworks for Live and Let Die, a virtual duet with John Lennon, and a mass sing-along to Hey Jude.
Stephen, your instant review.
I don't know what to say. It's quite overwhelming. I don't think there's anyone else in the world who can just give such unadulterated joy to people. Very, very privileged to be able to see that.
There was just time for Dave Grohl and Bruce Springsteen to return, 3 men who have headlined Glastonbury taking a final bow together.
Thank you, Glasgow!
Colin Patterson, BBC News, Glastonbury.
That's it for now. We're back at 5:20 on BBC One. Have a lovely afternoon.